Chinese motorcycles. Man, they seem to be the talk of the town in the motorcycle world these days. It's like everyone's talking about these things. It's just free enterprise at work, companies taking advantage of the infrastructure and low cost of manufacturing in China in order to sell a highly competitive product at a very accessible price point. Or is this a ploy for the Chinese government to infiltrate the US by creating sleeper cell communist motorcycle simps who will quietly dismantle the value system that this country was founded on? Are the people online espousing their xenophobic beliefs under the guise of patriotism while silencing the fact that they are actually just really scared and uncertain about what the future will look like? Am I qualified to talk about a topic with such global scope? Will Spite ever cut his hair? Oh, and most importantly, are Chinese motorcycles good for beginners? That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's rustle some feathers. Before we get into it, I want to shout out today's sponsor, Flying Eyes. We'll talk more about them later in the video. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you get notified every time a Chinese motorcycle is sold in America. So, Chinese motorcycles for beginners. First bike, that sort of thing. We're going to have to take some time to dissect this. Let's lay it out on the lab table, plunge a scalpel deep into its heart, and cut off its legs like that psycho kid did to the frog in middle school biology class. If I was asked this question years ago, it would have been an easy answer to say that starting on a Chinese motorcycle would be ill-advised. But things are changing lately. As you may have seen in our Your Motorcycle Is Not Made Where You Think It Was video, bikes from almost every manufacturer are made all over the world as is, with global supply chains affecting everything anyways. There are Ducatis being made in Thailand and Hondas in Indonesia, even Harley-Davidson's building bikes for Asian markets with Chinese manufacturers, QJ Motors, and KTM is in partnerships with CF Motos. The intricacies of global manufacturing are far from cut and dry. There's no denying that a lot of the resentment towards overseas manufacturing is rooted in prejudice. 70 years ago, people thought Japanese cars were cheap and poorly made, and now they're a benchmark for reliability. Sure, there are a lot of bootleg junk products from China, and their intellectual property laws are not as strict as ours, and you can see those as jokes on the internet or being vigorously advertised on TikTok, but I'm not sure if you can make the same generalizations about every single product made in China. Considering that 29% of global manufacturing takes place in China, a majority of products in your home are likely made there. It might be easier to rationalize the risk-reward of an inexpensive item like a jacket or a pair of Nikes, but people get a little more skeptical when it comes to more costly products, like a motorcycle, for instance. At least that's what they think, but through the power of branding, certain products earn your trust regardless of where they're produced, like your iPhone or your MacBook, which are mostly assembled in China, but then stamped with a wonderful designed in California sticker. If you're considering a Chinese motorcycle, it is probably best to first consider the brand. Certain manufacturers do really make crappy bootleg motorcycles, while others have pretty high quality standards or overseas accountability by other controlling companies. If you can buy a Chinese bike off of Amazon, don't. They're made cheaply with no-name parts, they'll break very quickly under normal use, and has no dealer and no shop will touch them. Then you've got yourself a $2,800 paperweight. Here's one of the top rated reviews for a weird street legal 250cc Amazon bike from X Pro. This was the best bike. My son rides this 24/7. He does his school buying. This make me very happy. It's not cheap, good battery. Okay, I take it back. I'm sold! But really, I feel like this is the type of motorcycle people think of when they think Chinese motorcycle. But let's look at a more reputable Chinese motorcycle company to see what they have to offer. And quick note before I get into this, we are not sponsored, supported, or made to say any of what you're about to hear on this video. Oh my goodness, nobody pays us to say anything. We are not bought by anybody, we're completely independent. Keep that in mind. One of the biggest Chinese manufacturers is CF Moto. They've been making waves in the past few years as they've begun to sell their motorcycles in the US. Josh and Whitney rode some bikes from CF Moto lineup a few weeks back, and they had some good things to say about them, which of course triggered a lot of people in the comments. But CF Moto isn't your Chinese Amazon crap bikes. They've been in the power sports business since 2003, and they have an existing dealer network all over the country and a US headquarters in Minnesota. So not only will these bikes be easy to find, but you also have the ability to source parts locally and bring them into service if necessary. While CF Moto has only recently started selling motorcycles, their other machines like ATVs and side-by-sides have been around long enough for their long-term reliability to be proven. There are plenty of people on the internet that only have positive things to say about the longevity of their CF Moto ATVs, so there's not really any reason to think that their motorcycles would be any different. Also, as we said earlier, CF Moto makes engines for KTM. Their motorcycles also come with a 2-year factory warranty, which is longer than most, probably in an attempt to instill confidence in the buyer, but with their large dealer network, getting them serviced under warranty should be relatively convenient if something were to come up. Let's look at a few motorcycles CF Moto has available and whether or not they'd be a good option for a beginner. But based on your interest in this video, the algorithm tells me you're a discerning consumer. Surely you care about the quality and reliability of the products you purchase, and that is why this video is proudly supported by Flying Eyes. Flying Eyes makes a super high quality sunglasses that are designed to fit comfortably inside a pilot's headset, motorcycle helmet, or a beer drinking hat, depending on what day of the week it is. Their frames are made of resilimide, so they're flexible and can adhere to the unique shapes of your Aero Chad skull and reduce noise and improve comfort. Their lenses offer 100% UV protection and come in a bunch of different shapes and sizes so you can retain the authenticity of your motorcycle cosplay. Go and check out Flying Eyes and use the code YAMMYNOOB for 10% off your order. Again, YAMMYNOOB for 10% off. Thanks, Flying Eyes. Check them out in the description down below. Now back to the video. So CF Moto has two different 300 class motorcycles. They've got the 300 SS, a fully faired sport bike, and a naked variant called the 300 NK. The names themselves imply the direct and utilitarian nature of the brand. Both motorcycles are powered by a 292cc liquid-cooled single that makes 29 horsepower and 19 foot-pounds of torque. The 300 SS has a 364-pound curb weight and a 31-inch seat height that lends itself to an approachable stature that is very beginner-friendly. It is by no means a race bike, but it's not really trying to be. It has standard beginner bike components like non-adjustable suspension and single disc brakes. Aside from the styling, the only other thing that differentiates the 300 NK from the SS is its even more beginner-friendly weight at 333 pounds. Something that sets these motorcycles apart from some of the competition is their tech features. CF Moto has these motorcycles outfitted with a 5-inch TFT display and advertises their proprietary phone connectivity app that offers navigation, ride statistics tracking, and real-time vehicle system diagnostics. The usefulness of this app can be debated, but the diagnostic features could come in handy if your bike decides to download some Chinese viruses. Kidding. The tech features are cool, but I can't help but think it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors to give the motorcycle more implied value to compete with the more recognized brands. It's just a phone and a TFT display. That stuff is super cheap to tack on. The most impressive thing about these bikes is the price. The 300 SS costs just $4,300, and the 300 NK is even cheaper at $4,000. There is not a brand new motorcycle with similar capabilities for cheaper than that, even Royal Enfield, but it is worth considering whether or not an extra $1,000 could get you a little bit more performance, aftermarket support, and brand recognition from a motorcycle from the Big Four. Because regardless of what the specs are on paper, it is hard to deny that in current ecosystems, a 300cc motorcycle from CF Moto is not going to get the respect from other riders that an R3 or Duke 390 would. We'd all like to be grown-ups and pretend like we don't care what other people think of the bikes we ride, but you'd have to be kidding yourself to pretend that there isn't a part of you that cares about superficial things like that. Trust me. CF Moto also makes some larger displacement motorcycles that could be suitable for the more mature beginner like the 650 NK and the 650 Adventure. The 650 NK is a naked bike with the 650cc parallel twin that makes 60 horsepower and 41 foot-pounds of torque. This engine has a striking resemblance to the 649cc twin found in the Kawasaki Ninja 650 and the Z650, all the way down to the same bore and stroke. Although it's arguably one of the most boring engines they could have been inspired by, just saying. The 650 NK has a few more upgraded components like rebound adjustable KYB front forks and a rebound and preload adjustable KYB monoshock out back. This bike also comes with dual disc front brakes and Pirelli tires, which is a nice touch. The 650 NK starts to show its inadequacies when you see its 454-pound curb weight, which makes it heavier and less powerful than the Z650, SV650, and MT-07. The 650 Adventure has similar mechanical components for better or worse, while being outfitted in an Adventure livery with hard panniers and fairing and a windscreen. These accessories all add up to an extra 25 pounds, leaving the 650 with a curb weight of 480 pounds. Both CF Moto 650 models have the same flashy tech features as the 300 models, the 5-inch TFT display and the rider app connectivity. The 650 NK retails at $6,500 and the Adventure costs $67.99, both very value priced. I feel as you look into CF Moto's 650 class of motorcycles, it becomes harder to leverage their value. I mean, yes, they're inarguably cheaper than any other brand new motorcycle of the same style, but only by $1,000 or $1,500. That may be about 20% of the total asking price, but you get 30% less motorcycle in return. You get a slower and heavier bike with features that don't necessarily need instead of an overall better motorcycle. These bikes from CF Moto work. I'm not denying that. They seem to be very well made and the brand has a good track record with one of their other off-road vehicles, but they have very little to offer besides a cheaper price tag and a TFT display. And we have one of these CF Moto bikes in the garage right now. We're actually going to review it and test it out. More on that later. And I don't mean to be a gatekeeper, but if you're buying a motorcycle based on what type of dash it has, you're probably doing it wrong. Or you're a BMW guy. Those tech amenities are typically the final deal breaker when comparing motorcycles of comparable price and performance. So if you want a motorcycle that works and you're really price conscious while being unsure about buying a used motorcycle, maybe a motorcycle from CF Moto is a good option. But I think once you become more experienced and more immersed in the culture, you'll realize that some of the experience you're missing out on by settling for a bike that just works while having even less personality than a Suzuki. CF Moto also has two different 700 class motorcycles. These are not bikes I would recommend for beginners, so I'll only touch on them briefly to supplement the greater point I'm trying to make. These bikes are the closest to posing a real threat to the competition, the middleweight roadster class. The 693cc engine in these bikes makes 74 horsepower and 48 foot-pounds of torque. The CLX weighs 432 pounds, and the CLX Sport weighs 451 pounds, so they're definitely more comparable to an MT-07 or a 650 from Suzuki than those other 650cc bikes from CF Moto. Why don't they just use that 693cc engine in all of their mid-sized bikes? I don't know. Why does Royal Enfield make the Meteor 350? There are some questions we'll never know the answer to. It is easy to disregard the emotional value of a motorcycle when comparing the specs and features, but at the end of the day, most riders have an emotional attachment to their bike. People love Harleys, even though they're big, slow, heavy, and kind of dumb. But they have an established brand identity that extends beyond just motorcycling and carries emotional weight. Ducatistas are another perfect example. A motorcycle from Ducati, a brand not known for being as reliable as a Japanese motorcycle, can still demand an MSRP that's nearly twice that of the competition. Because their motorcycles have a distinct character, the brand has history, pedigree, and clout. They're fast with an extra spicy exhaust note, and even the Big Four have their own diehard fans who ride or die for their teams. I just can't help but feel that a new rider will eventually miss out on that experience if they're purchasing a Chinese bike based solely on the price. As I said, if you want a cheap bike that works, CF Moto has you covered. But as it stands right now, the value they pose doesn't infatuate me enough to justify choosing CF Moto over a slightly more expensive Japanese motorcycle. Maybe that will change as they continue to grow and develop their market share in the US, or maybe it won't. One interesting thing to consider is that CF Moto bikes are very, very cheap off the get-go, and the used market right now for Japanese bikes is pretty crazy. Even beginner bikes from the Japanese manufacturers are going for a ton of money, and so if you're very price conscious in today's 10% inflation rates, then maybe a CF Moto bike makes a lot of sense. I know that a lot of you are trying to pinch pennies, but what do you think of Chinese motorcycle manufacturers like CF Moto making their way into the American market? Have you already made the jump and picked one up for yourself? I'm definitely curious, so let me know in the comments down below. Again, we do have a CLX here in the shop that we're going to be testing out and making some videos with. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe so we can catch you on the next one. And again, nobody from CF Moto paid us to say anything you just saw in this video. Do not at me. Fact, the longest musical performance in history still occurs today. This is taking place right now at the Church of St. Bucardi in Germany. The performance of John Cage's organ As Slow as Possible isn't scheduled to be finished until the year 2642. Goodbye. Well, look at you. You've made it to the end of another Yammy Noob video. You should consider yourself pretty lucky because I have curated this one right over here for you to continue watching. It's probably just as good as the one you just saw. Unless you hated the one you just saw. I don't know, maybe leave me a comment down below about how much you hated it as well too. Or just keep watching this one. Make sure you keep watching Yammy Noob. Don't forget to keep watching Yammy Noob. That's the most important thing. Keep watching Yammy Noob.